Good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday. So, looking at the market this morning, we do have a couple big movers and important news to cover. Looking at the SPY to start off, it's just trading slightly lower. There's not really like any major movement out of this one. But I will say, one of the most important stocks to look at as of right now is Peloton. It has been all over the place in pre-market. They reported earnings. Their CEO is stepping down, and they're trying to get their stuff together because it's been pretty rough lately. So Peloton's definitely going through some things. They have a new CEO, obviously, and it's had a wild ride in pre-market.
Yeah, it really did. It dipped all the way down to $26, popped all the way back up above $30 where we're sitting right now. And it honestly looks like it has some good momentum back to the upside. So hopefully this momentum holds up, Mike, because I know Peloton was beaten down quite a bit, and I was pretty happy to see it popping up yesterday, or I should say Friday and after hours. But, I really hope that it keeps going. They had those potential deals with Amazon, Apple, and I believe Nike. So there's definitely some good potential with this one. And overall, Mike, Peloton is looking pretty decent. I'm not sure it will be a good intraday trade today, but either way, I think they have some good news. And I actually have a pretty cool article that shows that they're replacing their CEO and they're cutting 2,800 jobs. Sometimes cutting jobs obviously can be bad, but sometimes it saves the company quite a bit of money. So hopefully this ends up helping them, and I hope that new CEO ends up being a pretty good name for them.
Yeah, they just need to get their stuff together because it's we'd have to look at their full fundamentals to get the full picture, but even in one of the best years for them, which was 2020 and 2021, they still were a disaster. So it's just I don't know. Peloton definitely has potential for the future, but it's just they just need to get their stuff together. But then again, it's the people who buy when there's the most fear and uncertainty usually end up getting the highest returns. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with this one, but there's definitely a lot of big news related to Peloton.
Yeah, there is. They said that they now see fiscal 2022 revenue within a range of $3.7 to $3.8 billion, down from a prior range of $4.4 billion to $4.8. So that's a pretty big decrease there. So definitely not good with those numbers. And looks like their subscriber numbers, definitely came in under the estimate, or at least their expectation is under the estimate. So definitely not good there, Mike. But I know that the big news with them was the potential takeover with Amazon, Apple, or Nike. So hopefully one of those deals ends up going through, because I think that's what would really give Peloton a big boost.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one thing to keep in mind, with mergers and acquisitions, I know a lot of times when we hear about, acquisitions and all that stuff, we instantly think of the stock price blasting up, kind of like what we saw with Activision. But one thing to keep in mind is let's say Apple or Nike or Amazon, really negotiates hard to buy Peloton. If Peloton right now is currently at, let's say, $30.30, and, they get bought out, they can easily get bought out for $25, So it's the point I'm trying to make is just because you hear merger and acquisition, that doesn't guarantee that the stock price will necessarily shoot up. It all depends on, what the terms of the deal are. But still, I will say that the merger/acquisition news has been good to Peloton so far.
Yeah, it has. And usually those big players would normally make a stock do pretty well, kind of like what you mentioned with Activision, but it doesn't happen every time. And we also have to keep in mind that, they might start running up on the rumor of this, and then if the rumor ends up not happening, the stock could end up tanking down quite a bit, like we've seen with Pinterest in the past. If we look at Pinterest on the daily chart, Pinterest did good with their earnings over the past few days, but we can see that they were running up with a rumor of getting bought out by PayPal. It ended up not happening, and then 2 days later, the stock was going way lower. So there's definitely a huge added risk whenever this stuff happens. But Mike, another good earnings report that came out this morning was Pfizer. And I don't mean to call it a good earnings report, but they ended up tanking down quite a bit, down to $50. That's a pretty big move out of Pfizer, down 5% almost.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. And I think we talked about this yesterday about Pfizer's earnings maybe being priced in, but Yeah, I mean it's tough to see. Like they did just get destroyed and perfect. I was just looking for you to pull up the article, but yeah, I mean Tom, how were their earnings?
Yeah, it actually says that they were pretty mixed. It says that in the fourth quarter, they actually did pretty good. They beat on their EPS, but they missed on revenue, which is kind of surprising to me, especially with all of the vaccines and stuff like that coming out. But they do say that they expect $54 billion in 2022 sales on COVID vaccines and their treatment pill. I haven't read fully through the article, but from what they're saying up here at the top, it sounds pretty decent. It's just that their revenue came in just under expectations. I would expect that maybe next year the revenue might do better if they're actually getting, $54 billion in sales, but we're just going to have to see how it ends up going. And I really hope that it ends up doing better because it's not good to see this stock down to $50 a share, especially with how much hype it's had lately with all the new vaccine, like the pill, and then just all the new treatments coming out.
True. How are like other vaccine stocks doing, like Moderna?
Moderna is actually falling down as well. They're down 4.3%. They have earnings coming up, it looks like, on February 24th. But it looks like, though, they're actually tanking down in sympathy. And, it looks like they've been falling for the past few days and past few months. Honestly, Pfizer was holding up a little bit better than Moderna for a while, but both of them are starting to tank off in pretty major ways now.
Gotcha. Interesting. So it looks like we have Mike saying, looks like more pain ahead. Yeah, you're probably right. So looking at the SPY today, it's not bad. It's just like weak. Like it had a great day for like 80% of the day yesterday, and like that last like 30 minutes, it just got destroyed, and it's just like we've been flat ever since. So I'm hoping we pop up, but yeah, Mike, it looks like you're probably going to be right.
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't look too good here. I'm hoping to see a nice bounce off of this 446 support. Looks like we got a bit of a bounce off of it in pre-market and at the end of the day yesterday. We've also bounced off of this level a few times over the past couple of weeks, but looking at this, if we fall below 446, I'm definitely going to start looking towards that low of last Friday, right around 444. I think that's going to be the next major support if we break below 446. And personally, it kind of looks like the SPY is going to fall today, but hopefully these stocks turn around, Mike. We do have a lot of stocks in the green. My watch list is more red than green, but I will say there is some pretty good companies doing pretty well. I know the banks were doing pretty decent earlier, like JP Morgan's having a pretty good day. So hopefully the S&P 500 can just hold its ground, but I definitely feel you, and it kind of looks bearish today.
Yeah, banks are looking pretty good, and even the value stocks, like even George mentioned how KO has new highs. So it's like the value stocks are slow and steady, Tom, as we both know, but they're definitely getting at some pretty nice levels. KO, brand new highs today, so that's pretty nice to see.
Yeah, it is. And then on the unfortunate side of things, it looks like we have DWAC kind of down like 6 or 7%. I don't know what happened to this one at the end of the day yesterday, Mike. Like, DWAC was on fire all day. It ran up to $97.15. I don't know if it hit a wall around $100 or what happened. I don't know if like the algos kicked in, but either way, a ton of bad selling pressure came into this one yesterday. I know the overall market tanked, but this one seemed to get hit particularly bad. It's just not looking good, all the way down to $78 now. That's a pretty big drop.
Tom, that thing fell off a cliff. Oh my gosh.
It
Wow.
did, and I didn't even see any major news for it.
That's crazy. Yeah, so I remember we were looking at it yesterday, but it's like, I'm just kind of like in awe. Like that just goes to show you like how volatile some of these stocks can be. And an interesting thing to see is like the implied volatility on DWAC is 182%. So to put that into perspective, like when you're trading some hype stock and the implied volatility is like 250% or 300%, like that goes to show you like truly how volatile those stocks should be. So that's crazy. But yeah, that is pretty crazy, Tom. Like I'm just like looking at the chart, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it blew my mind yesterday at the end of the day when I saw this happen. And this has been running up with some pretty good momentum. So you're right, definitely a volatile one. And this is why whenever you have plays like DWAC that run up so much, it's better to just get into very quick scalp plays, like fast in and out day trades, if you're going to play it at all, that's the only way I would do it. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely crazy. Like you said, that IV at almost 200%. Like that was just nuts yesterday.
You know it. Alrighty, so it looks like we have Spacely joining the stream saying, top of the morning, let's hit that like button. Let's go. So thanks for joining, Spacely. We appreciate you. Spacely also mentioned Baba. So Tom, we have not covered Baba in like a couple days, but it's definitely looking pretty good today. I mean, you can't beat this opening movement.
Yeah, you can't. It looks like it's recovering up from the bad drop Monday morning, which is great to see. We're almost all the way back up to 122. I think it looks great. You know, they kind of double bottomed at 114 also, if we count that pre-market bounce today. So I think it looks pretty good, Mike. It does look like it's up quite a bit today. Like I'm not going to expect it to run all the way up to 128 or anything in today's trading session. But heading into tomorrow, I could definitely see a possible another continuation. But yeah, lots of good momentum, and we're heading right up to those good resistance levels.
Awesome. All right, we have Jay Deep mentioning DWAC and how they delayed their launch. So I know that's definitely hurting the stock quite a bit. But then he also mentioned VLDR. So I have not been watching this one, but it is popping.
Yeah, it is. Look at this, up 22%. It looks like it's kind of falling down today since open, but yesterday when the market closed, this thing exploded. I don't know what type of good news came in for this, but looks very explosive, lots of good momentum, and hopefully this one ends up holding up. You know, it's still up 22%. Could you imagine if this one would have opened up at $7.59? It would have been up like almost 100% here.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why this one's running. This is the first time I've ever heard of this company, but let's see. I actually did read news about this. They have to do with like autonomous driving and like.
Oh, they do LiDAR actually.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that they have something to do with Amazon as well. I actually skimmed over an article this morning related to this, but yeah, this thing is definitely moving. Let's see, volume's definitely coming in. I mean,
yeah, personally, I think LiDAR could be a really good way for autonomous driving to go. I know, though, Mike, that we've seen Elon Musk make comments in the past, though, about LiDAR not being the best system for autonomous driving. Personally, I think it's pretty good, you know, especially if you have Elon Musk's system and then you add LiDAR to it. I think it would just make a really good system overall. But yeah, I mean, looking at the stock, it's definitely explosive, Mike.
Yeah, I don't know enough about LiDAR to have an opinion. I know like the basics of it, but I don't really know too much. So either way though, like VLDR stock has been doing terrible like over the past couple of months, but today it definitely has momentum, but it just looks like just a little bit weak, you know, like it had all this great movement in after hours yesterday and it's just been sliding off ever since.
Yeah, it has. If it ends up forming like a good support, it might end up being a good play. But as of now, it just looks like it's just slowly bleeding back off. And, you know, maybe watch some of these whole dollar levels. You know, it's kind of like right around $4.50. That might be a decent level to look at. And then maybe $4 after that.
Awesome. All right, we have George saying MVIS is also up considerably today, may be related. So, yeah, that's actually a decent point right there. I mean, it is breaking out. It is up 7.5%. Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know. I guess we'll know as the day plays out.
Yeah, I think we will. And I don't see too much news going on for Microvision yet. I'll definitely have to check the Thinkorswim news tab a little bit more later on. But I did see that really good news with VLDR, though. You know, it says they got into that deal with Amazon, and they're going to actually issue 39.59 million warrants, which can be exchanged for common shares. So that sounds pretty cool. And, you know, hopefully that keeps going well. I know companies who make deals with Amazon generally, you know, end up doing pretty well, you know, and we even saw Peloton move the other day on that rumor.
True that. Tom, we do have Peloton creeping up there right now. Like, I know they're not blasting up, but still, they had one great recovery from lows of like 26 this morning.
Yeah, they really did. That's a nice recovery to see. And, you know, it was kind of strange to see them report those earnings today, Mike. Like, I honestly thought that they were going to be reporting those earnings yesterday. We can see the earnings whispers chart shows that Peloton was supposed to report after close. And I do believe on Thinkorswim it said after close as well. Maybe someone else can let us know, but it did kind of surprise me to see these guys report this morning. And, it's been all over the place, and you're right, it's holding up very, very well. They're holding that $30 support really good, which I think is great. And then they're heading right back up towards that $32 resistance. If they break 32, I mean, I could see them retesting that high of pre-market earlier in the week around 34.
Indeed. You know it. One company that's set to have a pretty big day is actually Corsair. You brought up earnings, and I know Corsair has earnings after the bell today, but Corsair is one of those companies that has just been it's in an industry that's growing a lot and that should continue to grow a lot over the years to come. They're a solid company, but their stock has been getting, we'll say it has not been doing well. We'll say that. But either way, they do report earnings after the bell. I think this will be a pretty big report in the sense that it's going to cover, I guess you could say, like the holiday season and all that stuff. So we'll see what happens, but Corsair is at a pretty low level. I don't think it would continue to fall more, but then again, the market loves to surprise us.
Yeah, it definitely does. And we've been seeing stocks tank down lately on earnings or start flying up. And, one thing we can look at with this, Mike, is Logitech reported earnings a couple of weeks ago. And if we look at Logitech's earnings on like the 180-day, 1 hour chart, we can see that they ended up having a pretty nice pop with their earnings, at least for that initial day that they came out. So hopefully Corsair reports some good numbers. Even if it doesn't end up, making the stock pop too much, I just really want to see some good fundamentals from them and maybe some good numbers from over the holidays. Obviously the holidays are pretty big for some of these companies, and I just love to see Corsair get those good numbers. I'm a shareholder of them, so I'm obviously pretty biased.
Yeah. I am slightly concerned to see like how all of these shortages affected them, though, because like as we've seen with Facebook, Snapchat, and just like advertising in general, like even with Google, advertising slowed down a little bit, especially for some of these companies. I know Snapchat was hit a decent amount, and then Facebook too. Google held up pretty well, but the fact that like a lot of these companies, like they don't have enough supply to sell, so they're like, all right, we're not going to advertise because we don't like we're sold out. So what I'm curious about is like how did Corsair manage the shortages? Because it's like a lot of times there's not really much you can do. Like if there's a shortage of something, it's like there's a shortage, and like you're just put in like a tough position. So I guess we'll see by the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why they've been falling down. We've been seeing some stocks like AMD and Nvidia, for example, running up with these shortages in a pretty good way. But, we saw Corsair and Logitech kind of sliding off over the past year with the shortages. So definitely like two different ends of the spectrum there. And you're right, it's going to be pretty important to see what they end up talking about. And it seems like lately, Mike, that some of these guidances and some of the outlooks are more important than the actual earnings numbers themselves. I think that we're just in such a crucial point with the economy that the next year is almost more important than what's been going on.
Oh yeah, Tom, you know how it is. Like a company can report terrible earnings, but say, oh, we plan to make this much money next year, and then the stock will pop up. And at the same time, a company can report, tens of billions of dollars in profit, maybe slightly miss expectations and, lower their guidance, and the stock's down 10%. It's just like, it is what it is, I guess. But the market acts in some interesting ways sometimes. But at the end of the day, those like weird times ultimately do provide a lot of great opportunities. Because, if you have a company that has great earnings, but, maybe fell down 15%, that's a good buying opportunity.
Yeah, it really is. And we've been seeing it happen a lot lately. We can look at Netflix. They took a big drop here. Facebook took a big drop. It's not just even them. Over the past few months, we've been seeing so many other stocks falling down, like Snapchat, Twitter, like you name it. If it's like in the growth sector, it's pretty much been falling down. So, definitely lots of good long-term pickups down here. And, hopefully we start to see these stocks rise up. That implied volatility is starting to move quite a bit. So, it's getting me a little bit excited that we might get a nice move to the upside soon. But, hopefully the implied volatility is not forecasting another drop. That would be a bad sign.
Oh, gosh. So, Tom, I saw you were on BABA for a little bit. This one is blasting to the moon. It's up 6.5%. the market has only been open for like 20 minutes, and this one is running.
Yeah, it's coming right back up. I mean, this is a crazy recovery. We just filled that gap right back to the upside, which is awesome. We popped right back up above 120. We're all the way back up to that 122 resistance. We're also touching that 1,000 SMA on the 5 minute. So we'll have to see if we can break this crucial resistance level here. But man, I mean, it looks like it has the momentum to possibly do it. And, you know, if we look at BABA on the daily chart, it has a lot of room to start growing to the upside. And we triple bottom down here around the 110 support. This has been a humongous support over the past couple of months. And if this ends up holding up, I mean, this will be a really good buying opportunity. And I could see BABA starting to fill this gap between like 140, which pretty much between 150 and 160 here eventually over the next couple of months.
Yeah, so I can too, actually. So we'll see. Besides that, do you have like any other like big levels to watch on this one?
Yeah, it's actually been in a bit of a range. Like I said, for the past couple of months, we've been bouncing off of that 110 support, but we've been having a lot of trouble breaking out up above 130 and then 140. It seems like there's a huge level at $140 that we've bounced off of a couple of times and had some pretty major moves off of. So I would say if we could break out above 140, we might be able to have a pretty good fill of that gap up towards 160. But in the shorter term, we're going to have to see if we can break out above 130 because that's going to be the next level, at least over the next like couple of days.
Sounds good. So yeah, looking at some of the plays that we have moving today, Tom, it looks like we're finally seeing some profit taking with Exxon Mobil. You know, this one has been on one great run up, we'll say that. But it does appear it is in the red slightly today. Nothing major, but still, like we're slightly above that $80 support, which, you know, can turn into a resistance level. But I don't know, it's just something to watch because Exxon has been crazy lately.
Yeah, it has. We're up over 30% from the beginning of the year. That's pretty insane. You know, we've only the market's only been open for a couple of months here, so or just about for a month. So that's pretty crazy to see that it's up 30% over that given time. If we look at crude oil, it's also starting to dip down today. I know crude was hitting $93 last week, and I think it's just time to expect a pullback out of some of these. You know, even crude oil, it's just we're seeing such big runs of the upside that it eventually has to slow down or just has to have some red days sprinkled in. That doesn't mean that Exxon won't keep going up over the next couple of weeks. You know, we've had that weird stuff going on with Russia and Ukraine. That could always keep pushing the prices higher. But just on a charting standpoint, I would definitely think that we would start to consolidate pretty soon.
Yep. Another industry that we have booming today is actually the cruise lines. CCL is up like 2.5%, which is pretty good, especially for a cruise line.
Yeah, they are. They're doing very well. They broke that high of pre-market around $22. They're starting to really run up there. I know the airlines were also doing pretty good again this morning. I know yesterday they all started running up whenever Spirit and Frontier announced that deal. I don't know if they were just running up in sympathy or if it's just overall just that whole sector rising. But in general, they're looking pretty good. Like you said, CCL's coming up. RCL's looking pretty good. And I'm glad to see RCL recovering after they reported those. You know, at least they didn't report terrible earnings, but the stock fell anyway. So I'm glad to see it recover.
Yeah. Alrighty. We have Raymond saying F is falling with a question mark. So yes, Ford is taking a beating today. It's down almost 4.5%. It's not looking too good. They've been in free fall ever since, I guess you could say, like the second week of January. Their price target was adjusted this morning. We could see that their price target was adjusted to $14.40 from $13 though, which, you know, it's like they upped the price target, but it's lower than the current stock price. And then they also had another adjustment from $14.50 to $15.50. They had a sell rating along with that adjustment, and they had another price target adjustment from $12 up to $13. So it's like the price targets were actually increased, Tom, but the problem is that all the price targets are below the current stock price.
Yeah, and some of those were pretty far below too. Like the ones you were mentioning around like $12.50 or like $14. That's pretty insane to see that it's still that low. But Yeah, I mean, looking at like from the start of last year, Mike, I mean, Ford has just been on a tear. Like, even to right now, we're still up 96% from the start of last year. So that's still a pretty big increase alone. And I think that's why Ford's falling down so rapidly. They were running up and they had a lot of good momentum. They had a lot of good news coming out. They were investing in the EV industry. And sometimes, stocks just have too much hype for their valuations. Like we talk about, Mike, Ford, like we talk about with some of these lower priced EV stocks, they end up, just running up with hype, and then they ended up coming back down to those valuations. And I think Ford is another stock that just had to kind of go through that phase here over the past couple of months. And looking at it, I still like Ford for the long term, but over the next couple of months, I mean, I'm definitely going to be a little bearish on it. It's starting to break through some major supports at $20, is falling through $18 now. And I could just see it going a little bit lower here before starting to rise back up. They've been investing a lot of money into the EV space, and their costs are probably going to get pretty high here. Plus, they said the chip shortages affected them last quarter.
True. How's Tesla doing?
Tesla's not doing the best either. I mean, at least it wasn't yesterday. Looks like my Thinkorswim chart is lagging a little bit, but they're actually holding up pretty well today. They fell off at market open, but they recovered right back, which is great to see. That they're definitely not down as much as Ford. So I think that's a good sign, and hopefully it was just company specific for Ford. I wonder how GM's doing. Oh wow, look at GM. They're kind of following Ford in a major way, unfortunately, though.
Yeah, that's interesting. How are like the other EVs doing, like Rivian?
Yeah, oh yeah, Rivian. It looks like NIO's recovering up. We have Rivian. Rivian tanked down, but they recovered up more like Tesla. I would say Rivian is looking more like Tesla today. So, but it's definitely not doing good. It's down 0.4%, and they've been falling down over the past few weeks. So, maybe they've been falling down with Ford, but they didn't fall down today with them. But I will say a lot of these EV stocks have been tanking down lately, and I feel like that Ford was just kind of, obviously catching up to the trend.
Yeah. Yeah, we have Jerry saying that he's in Tesla puts. Let's go. Hopefully Tesla falls off the board for Jerry. I know he's been pretty spot on lately, so hopefully that trend continues. And Tom, I will say, like, over the past couple weeks, Tesla has been pretty weak. So, and on top of that, we're like right around that like $900 support. So hopefully it fades down for Jerry today.
Yeah, I hope it does. We're right around that big support. That'll be a big thing to watch. If we fall below 900 and then below 880, I could see it starting to really sell off. And then we're also kind of confirming off of this blue trend line. We've been having a ton of bounces over the past couple of years on this blue trend line here, and we're having a lot of trouble getting above that over the past couple of weeks. So I could see this one starting to sell off too, especially with the other stocks in its sector like Ford starting to go down. I hope to see Tesla rise though, but since Jerry's in puts, I'll be happy with it going down at least for a few days.
Yeah, at least for a couple of days, so Jerry can make bank off those puts. So let's go, Jerry. Hopefully it falls for you. We have George saying Google just filled the gap from earnings. So let's take a look. GOOGL. So yeah, it did actually. That's pretty crazy. Like, I know that it had so much hype, Tom, for like that first day or two with that split news, but I guess we're just in like a different market than we were than when Apple and Tesla split, because when Apple and Tesla split, like it was in like the middle of the like strongest bull market ever, we can say. And I guess things are just slowing down a little bit now, and I guess we can definitely see that reflected in Google's stock price. And another thing I wanted to say is, like, retail traders trade Apple pretty frequently. It's easy. The stock is only $172 each. The options are liquid, but Google, when it's like $3,000 a share, and the options are, I guess you could say illiquid, you just don't get that same type of hype.
Yeah, you don't. And it's just, like you mentioned, that high price really scares a lot of investors. And even though the high price doesn't always necessarily mean that, you can't trade it or you can't win on it or anything like that, it still is pretty, daunting to a lot of, smaller accounts to see, hey, this stock is $3,000 a share. Sometimes that just blows people away. But yeah, I mean, I definitely see what you're saying. And Google just needs to get that hype back. I had the hype with the split news, and I feel like that as we start to get closer to that split, Google might start rising. One issue I saw with Google is just that they announced the split, and when was it happening, Mike? Like all the way in July?
Yeah, I believe July 15th.
Yeah, that is like pretty far away. Like I don't know like how like whenever Apple reported their split, I don't know how long, they were running up before they actually did split, but I don't think it was like, 6 or 7 months. So looking at it, I just feel like it's just so far away that maybe whenever we get a couple of months closer to July, then we'll start to see a run.
Yeah, that's another good point too. Like maybe like as we get closer to the split date and as the market hopefully calms down, that should be better
Yeah.
for it. But then again, like, just a couple days ago, it was at its all-time high. So it's like the split definitely helped it at least for like that day or two. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it's hard to bet against Google because they're just a complete powerhouse. So I don't know. I mean, Tom, do you have like any like major levels for Google?
Yeah, actually, I do. There's a couple big ones. It looks like one right around $2,600 is going to be a major, major support. If we get back down to there, it'll be kind of crazy, but we might with the way it's starting to fill these gaps back down. But as far as also, we're kind of filling the gap right back down to another major support right around like 2750. If we end up bouncing like at 2750, I think we could start to see a pretty good move here. Yeah, looking at it, yeah, right around 2750. So if we end up bouncing, I mean, I think it can make for a nice move. Just like they said, we just filled that gap back down. And sometimes after you fill the gap, you start to see some consolidation. So that's what I would look at. But honestly, the earnings made it just go so crazy to the upside that it's kind of hard to look at some of these levels. But as far as like resistance, if we start rising again, I would look at $2,800 even.
Sounds great. So, checking back in with the market overall, the SPY is definitely fading lower. Tom, we're at a critical support level right around 446, and a lot of stocks are not looking too good right now.
Yeah, definitely not. And I could see this one going quite a bit lower today, at least in over the next few minutes. The SPY has just been sliding off over the past couple of weeks. I like to call it sliding off. It just continues to trade lower. And then when the market opens, sometimes it gets a little bit of a pop back to the upside, hits resistance, and then starts to turn back over, kind of like what we saw today. The market opened, the SPY went flat to slightly up, hit that resistance. Now we're falling through that 446 support in a major way, heading back down towards 444. Yeah, I mean, I could see this one at least touching 444, Mike. Like you mentioned, just a lot of stocks today are not doing good. My watch list has slowly been turning more red as the day has been going on, and a lot of these good stocks are in the red. We have AMD down. I think Nvidia might be down. It sucks to see these stocks starting to turn back over here. And some of them are pretty big. Even like Disney and Tesla are turning back over in major ways.
True that. Yeah, looks like it's not looking too good so far. Just doing a quick scan, we definitely have, just trying to see like some decent setups. Like Nvidia's breaking lower, which is looking good for a potential play. Let's see, what else? Snapchat's struggling. I mean, even Disney's struggling. Exxon's not looking too bad. Let's see, Exxon Mobil. Yeah, that one's fading off. So it looks like a put day today, or maybe even a day for like some VIX calls.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go check out the VIX actually, or the VXX anyways. Yeah, it looks like the VXX. Mike, I will say, a lot of people say that, supports obviously aren't the best to look at on VXX, but for some reason, it always likes to bounce off of $20. And we can see once again this morning, it bounced right off of $20 in pre-market. We got pretty close at market open within just a few cents there. And we came right back up. It's looking pretty good. We're only up 0.64%. If the SPY keeps selling off, though, this one could end up having a pretty good run, possibly back up towards, I think, that $22 area. So hopefully we see the SPY, keep going down. I know it sucks to say, I hope the SPY goes down, but I just hope to see it continue with some good momentum in one direction or the other, just so we can catch some nice day trades.
Yeah, it's been wild. Let's see, what else? I mean, yeah, we basically covered like most of the major movers. Tom, do you have like any specific stocks you were watching or anything like that?
Yeah, it looks like these banks might be turning back over as well. JP Morgan was running up in a major way, and they're starting to hit a resistance at around 158 and then just starting to consolidate a little bit Looks like also Bank of America is starting to turn back over also, which is not good to see. How are the airlines holding up? It looks like they're kind of consolidating here as well. Boeing's actually turning right back over, Mike. Boeing was looking explosive yesterday. They're kind of retesting that 210 support today. So we'll have to see if this one ends up holding up. But, it's not going to be good if Boeing falls back below 210, especially just in the short term. But for the longer term, I'm hoping Boeing ends up holding up here, Mike. Like if we look at them on the daily chart, they've been almost triple bottoming down here around $190 to $200. So I'm hoping that they finally can just go on a nice uptrend.
True. All right. Let's see. I'm just doing a quick scan. One stock I wanted to look at really quickly was CFVI. This is the Rumble SPAC. It was running up so much yesterday, and it's kind of holding up at least right now. It's just like one of those SPAC plays. Like this thing can easily be at, $55 in a week from now, and it can easily be at like $2 in a week from now. Like it's just like a very high risk, very high reward type setup. I've been watching it, but it's just it seems like the momentum is just slowly dying off, at least as of right now. But then again, the IV is 144%, so it's going to be volatile.
Yeah, that's crazy to see the IV up that high on CFVI, and it just rose a ton over the past couple of days. Obviously, yesterday, it looks like the market opened and the IV rose from like 100% all the way up to like what do you say the high was yesterday? Like 175% or something like that. That's insane to see that much of rise in one day. But they did have that nice movement. But it was crazy to see their CEO come out, Mike, and actually say that we stand with Joe Rogan and we'd like to offer you 100 million reasons to make the world a better place, in their own words. So we'll have to see how this all ends up playing out. I don't think that Joe Rogan will leave Spotify or anything like that, but it's pretty cool to see to see Rumble CEO trying to make moves like this. And CFVI started running up yesterday. We had DWAC running up also, and I'm wondering if some of these other platforms are going to start getting a lot more popular whenever DWAC comes onto the market. There's obviously lots of controversy with it. Obviously people on both sides of the political spectrum have their own opinions, and obviously DWAC has been hated on and loved quite a bit. So no matter your opinion, though, the stock has been going absolutely nuts, and it's just such a fun subject to cover because, like, look at the way CFVI moved yesterday. We moved from $13 at market open all the way up to $18. Like some of the percentages are just insane.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And we're coming back up to like a flat day. Like the stock is slowly just like climbing back up there. Right now it's technically down like 0.26%, but we're getting back up there. So we will see. What else do we have moving? I will say like BABA and the China stocks are still looking kind of strong. Cruise lines are showing some strength. What else? I mean, those are really the only industries that are like really showing strength today. A lot of other industries are just like weak, and it's not that they're necessarily crashing. It's just like they're just weak. Like if we look at, I don't know, Boeing for example, it's just like doing nothing, and it's just like shredding theta, we can say. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to see how the day ends up playing out. Lots of stocks are down. I hope that we see some of them start turning around, but I'm not too hopeful. It looks like the SPY, it fell below 446, started selling off, and now it came right back to the upside. I don't think this one's done yet today, Mike. Like it's been so volatile the past few days. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the SPY fell to 444 and then ended up closing up at 450. Like, we've been, look at the way that this has been going the past few weeks. Like, I just can't believe it. It's been like a heartbeat monitor. I know yesterday Jerry posted that heartbeat monitor in there. He had me laughing.
Yeah, that is true though. Like you were just pointing out the SPY from, is that Friday? Yeah, I think that's Friday. It fell all the way down to 443.50. A couple hours later, it's at like 452.50. So that is wild.
Yeah, and yesterday it did the same thing on a smaller level. It ran up the highs of 450, and then within 20 minutes of market close, fell all the way down to 446 and probably blew traders away. So it was just, It's been crazy the past few weeks, and obviously we've had so much stuff going on. I'm really worried still about those situations overseas, like with Ukraine and Russia. I feel like that's just a bad thing waiting to happen. I don't think that we're going to go into a full out war or anything like that, but obviously it's just been crazy for the markets. And, we're going to have these next FOMC meetings coming up are going to be nuts whenever they start raising rates. So we'll just have to see how the market ends up playing out, Mike. But as of today, it's just so volatile. I could still see it maybe selling back off a little bit, but we'll have to see how these stocks end up playing out. Like, I wonder how like Apple and Microsoft are looking. And yeah, I mean, they're just still totally flat.
True that. Alrighty, so we have Jerry saying thoughts on Lucid. So Lucid has been all over the place. It has potential for the long term, but they do have to get a lot done to justify their valuation. So for me, like, I'm not specifically watching it for like a short-term play. It's just like a longer-term stock that, it's like it has potential, but it's just like it needs time. So with that being said, Tom, do you see like any like major levels to watch? Like if someone was or were to trade this for either today or even the next couple weeks?
Yeah, I would say for today, there's some pretty big levels to look at. If I'm going to look at like a 90-day, 5-minute chart and just see if we can see these levels pretty good. Okay, we can. So if we look at Lucid here, you can see they had a pretty good bottom level down here, right around $25 and like 70 cents. Like you could just say $25.50 right around. So if we fall below 25.50, I could see Lucid starting to fall off in a major way. And we can see that Lucid had a pretty big drop a few weeks ago, and then we've just been consolidating and going flat in a range between 26 and 30. And it looks like we're starting to fall out of that range. So definitely eye it up. If we end up bouncing on this and it holds up as a good support, it might be a pretty good play back to the upside, at least in the short term. But I would almost lean more to the downside, especially with the type of day that we're having already and just the way the overall tech sector is looking. I could just see this one going a little bit lower. And I'm pretty biased towards Lucid. I'm also seeing a pretty good upper resistance around $28 before we get to 30 if you're looking at something super short term. But yeah, like I said, I'm pretty biased towards this one. I like it for the long term. But like I was saying a few weeks ago, it just wasn't looking good. We hit off this $48 resistance and started going lower. And for the longer term, I'm definitely going to be eyeing up this major support around $20 even.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, it's been all over the place. Like, obviously, over like the past couple months, it went from lows of like 16 all the way up to highs of, what's the high, Tom? Like 55?
Yeah, actually, all the way up there around like 58, almost $60.
Wow. So it's a runner, clearly. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, looking at some of the like other, I guess you can say, plays to watch today. I mean, really, the only thing I'm seeing with like momentum are the China stocks and cruise lines. And banks too. Banks are looking pretty decent.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go down my watch list here. We have Peloton at the top of it, up 11%, starting to come back down a little bit. Like you mentioned, BABA and the banks are actually leading the way here. BABA it hit off that 122 resistance, unfortunately, and that 1,000 SMA and started coming right back down. So hopefully we can end up breaking that resistance. Kind of like what I talked about earlier, Mike. BABA was already up like 5 to 7% at the time. So maybe it was just, slowing down with that momentum just a little bit. But you're right. I mean, these banks are just going crazy. Like, look at JP Morgan continuing to break and then run up today. They're all the way up to 158. That's a pretty nice move. Then we have Bank of America coming in right under them, starting to come back up. And then, like we've been talking about, those airlines are also starting to rise again. So looks like the banks and the airlines are particularly the two sectors rising.
Interesting. So I just want to go back to Lucid for 1 second. Jerry said, short-term bearish, long-term you like. So I just want to clarify, short-term, I'm just neutral. Long-term, it's like one of those plays that like has a shot of, 5 to 10xing. But then again, this company can be bankrupt in 5 years from now. So it's like I have a position in it for the long term, but it's a very, very small position. It's just like, I've been reading into Lucid. It has potential, but obviously it's not going to be, it's not going to provide the safety that, let's say, a Coca-Cola would provide, but at the same time, it doesn't have that insane growth potential that I think DraftKings has. It's just like kind of like giving me exposure to the electric vehicle market, but then again, like it's just like it's going to be a hit or miss play. There's just so many variables with this one.
Yeah, and personally, I think it's going to be pretty good. They came out with the Lucid Air, and it won Car of the Year this year, Motor Trend's Car of the Year, let alone, which is a pretty big accomplishment, I'd say, from a new company. So looking at it, I hope they end up doing good. Like you said, Mike, it's going to be hit or miss, especially with that production over the next couple of years. But personally, I see them doing pretty good. I think they have a pretty good name to them. Kind of like Tesla. I think that Lucid sounds like a pretty catchy name. Whenever I look at other EV companies like Workhorse, for example, it doesn't ring quite as well to me as like Lucid does, or even like Rivian. I think Rivian sounds pretty good also. And also Rivian, their truck won Truck of the Year. So looking at it, I mean, it's pretty crazy to see these two companies coming in here getting these awards. But like you said, they're going to have a lot of issues with production in the next couple of years. But I think that they're two big players that aren't going to go anywhere, at least. Like you said, they could always go bankrupt over the next like 5 or 10 years, but I don't know. Personally, I don't see it.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I do have a long-term position on it. It's just very small. So
yeah, and I think that as we go down, like I said before, I think that $20 support will be a really good price point to buy at. In the short term, Mike, I will say this is almost looking like a bit of a dead cat bounce here if we start falling below this $25 area.
Yeah. Like Jerry said, sounds incredibly speculative. In the same boat as Rivian for me now. It's just like, think about how hard it is to start up like a functioning, efficient car company. And nowadays, the competition is stronger than ever. Like, Lucid is competing against Tesla, Rivian, of course, Ford, General Motors, Toyota, like it's just like I can every single car company is working on an electric vehicle now. So it's like I just feel like we're further in the development stage of electric vehicles. Like I guess you can say 5 years ago, like Tesla was one of the main companies that was like focusing really hard on electric vehicles, but it's like nowadays like every car company's doing it. And it's really hard to one, build a working design, but then two, like manufacture everything that's needed in an efficient way and then let alone turn a profit. So it's just like starting a car company is no easy task, and it's a very competitive industry, and Lucid is already, I guess you're going to say, establishing themselves somewhat well. It's just they have a lot of very tough competition, and they have a lot of hard work to do to justify their crazy valuation.
Yeah, and like we've been seeing over the past couple of years, I actually have a pretty good article pulled up here, or I should say the past couple of months. Lucid did come out and confirm they had some pre-orders, and they confirmed 20,000, or they confirmed a 20,000 vehicle production target for next year, but they said hurdles still remain for achieving those plans, like chip delays, production problems, everything like that is going to cause some issues with these companies. But it looks like they said that their reservations through September represented an order book of $1.3 billion, which is pretty good for a new company. So hopefully they end up doing good. It's going to be pretty crazy to see how these end up playing out. And, like you said, Mike, they're going to be volatile. The big thing is buying them at the right price. I think getting in somewhere around $20 is at least a good time to start averaging in. But, I know a lot of people, unfortunately, were buying in at, $40 or $50. And unfortunately, you just have to kind of look at these stocks and say, hey, they're just too early on in the growth stage to really start flying up from 50 up to, $200 a share like people are thinking. It's just it's another one of those scenarios where, you're expecting a company to just have too much growth in too short of a time. And Lucid's not going to do a Tesla. If we go look at Tesla's chart and we look at 10,000% gains over the past couple of years, the chances of that happening are so low. And I feel like too many retail traders are looking for it to do this. rather than looking for it to kind of play out like a growth stock.
Yeah. And then Jerry said, I see what you're saying. If Apple actually comes out with a car lucid to workhorse levels, so that's another thing. Like we were mentioning like all the top like auto manufacturers, but we didn't even mention how Apple is, hinting at getting into the EV space. Like that's another thing. So
Yeah, it is. And, with Apple, I mean, it's going to be tough for them to even break into the market. Like we're looking at, we're worried about Lucid, which already won Car of the Year, and these guys haven't even developed one yet. So, I mean, whenever they announce it, it's going to be a crazy time even for Apple. I wouldn't be surprised if they even ended up going down in the short term when they announce it.
I would say, though, that I would think that it would be easier for Apple to develop a car than Lucid. And the reason I say that is because...
Well, Lucid already has one developed.
What did you say?
Lucid already has one developed.
Yes, that's true. But Apple has just like an unrivaled, I guess you can say, brand. Like almost everyone uses Apple. Everyone knows about them. Two, they have insane amounts of cash. So they basically have unlimited spending. And on top of that, they already have like all of the engineering power. So it's like, I know it might be an unpopular statement, but I really do think Apple, if they seriously wanted to compete in the EV industry, which I guess we'll see if they do or not, I really think that they would give Lucid and a lot of these other like newer EV companies a run for their money.
Yeah, I do too, actually. I believe that it'll definitely affect that market in a major way. And one big thing, Mike, that I'm going to get a little bit speculative about is, we've also been seeing rumors about Tesla coming out with a phone. And I'm a little bit curious that I'm really curious actually if Tesla saw Apple looking to get into the EV sector, and obviously that created a bit of a disruption. I wonder if Tesla kind of said, hey, we'll come into your sector if you want to come into our sector. So it's kind of interesting. I'll be honest, it's very interesting to see both of these companies rumored to get into each other's sectors. And honestly, I think if Tesla came out with Tesla phones, I mean, I think Apple would be in a world of hurt, to be honest. Like, I'd be switching with the snap of my fingers. So I hope Tesla comes out with phones personally. And man, that's just, you're right. I mean, it's going to be a war of two humongous companies if Apple does that. Because if they do, I think Tesla really will get into phones.
Yeah, Apple's getting into EVs and Tesla's getting into smartphones. 2022.
It sucks because I love both companies. I don't want to see them fight. I think Tim Cook's been one of the more reliable CEOs over the past few years, and we can't doubt Elon. He's been the king lately.
Yeah, Jerry said I'd pay $2,000 for a Tesla phone. I'm sure a lot of other people would too.
I would. I mean, my Apple phone cost $1,200, so I mean, we're not too far off.
True. So we have Bill saying, we have Jay saying NVAX puts. It looks pretty bad. So let's take a look. NVAX. Yeah, I mean, it is looking pretty tough. Let me just look at the chart a little bit more. Yeah, I mean, it is looking pretty tough. Yeah, I would agree with it. The IV is a little high, though, which is definitely a concern. 132% is quite the premium. It is down like 14% today, too. So, like, part of me wonders, yeah, it can fall down, like, let's say to 15% or 17% or whatever, but it's like, is it worth the risk? And that's where I'm a little bit stuck.
Yeah, I am too. I'm not sure if it's worth that risk or not, and it's already had a huge drop, down 13%. Personally, this one's just a no play for me, Mike. Like, could you imagine? Like, imagine all the people who were playing this to the upside yesterday with that humongous rise, and then look at it now. Like, it's just all over the place. It fell below that major level at $80, at least major over the past few days. So I don't know. I'm just going to definitely eye this one up. It looks like it's at a big, like, long-term support, but keep in mind that support's down there around like $66 or $70, and we're at $80 right now.
True. All right, then we have Bill saying, do you think some of these EV companies will ever merge to compete versus the Ford and GMs? Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, let's say over like the next 5 to 10 years, let's say Rivian gets getting really strong and they're developing a lot and they're becoming like a powerhouse company, and then let's say they see one of these smaller EV companies, like I don't know, like let's just say Lucid struggles. Like this is a total random example. We might see Rivian acquire Lucid, and then and then they become like a stronger brand, and then they might acquire someone else to eventually compete with the Ford and GM. So yeah, it's definitely possible. Mergers and acquisitions definitely do happen, like especially when there's a strategic move in the marketplace. So I don't know. We'll see. To be honest, like if we said any specific companies would merge in the future, like it's just like a total it's complete speculation. So
That's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
yeah. Yeah, so we just have to play that news as it happens. Obviously we don't have any specifics just yet, but to answer your question, yes.
Yeah, and as I look at these stocks, Mike, one big thing to keep in mind also is that Ford, for example, has a stake in Rivian. So I don't know how that's going to end up playing out, but if we think about it, Amazon has a stake in Rivian, Ford has a stake in Rivian, and let's say Rivian, let's just say they can't get up to production over the next couple of years. And like you mentioned, if some of these companies end up not doing as well and they might start looking to go bankrupt, personally, what I would expect, Mike, is maybe some of the bigger players like Ford and GM to acquire these companies rather than the companies to be absorbed by each other. So personally, I would kind of expect a GM or a Ford to maybe buy up a Rivian if it ended up going down a lot, especially since they already have a stake in there. That would kind of make some sense. And they already, they already know people at the table at least. So, you would think maybe that would be a hypothetical as well, but obviously no one knows, and anything can happen over the next few years.
True that. We have Bill saying Apple could buy a company instantly, putting them in the EV space. They have the cash. That's a great point. I know we were
exactly
talking
like
about...
I said with Ford and GM.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like what Tom said with Ford and GM, basically. But let's say Apple is trying to get into the EV space. They might just say, all right, we're gonna let's say they see Rivian or Lucid or anyone at a very attractive price. They say, all right, well, the cash we have just sitting in our bank account is not getting us a return, so we'll just invest this into the EV space, and at the same time, it'll expand the brand even more. So it's definitely a good point. Tom, I will say, though, on a different note, Peloton is exploding.
Is it? Let's check it out again. Yeah, look at this. It's up 15%. The daily chart is looking so good for this one. Let's see it. Yeah, it's starting to really run up. It broke above that $32 resistance we talked about early in the morning, and it's starting to really run. We're almost up to $35 at this point, and it's almost to the high of after hours on Friday when that potential rumor came out with Amazon. So yeah, it looks like they're running up. Obviously these rumors are good. They did a lot of crazy stuff with their earnings. They announced a new CEO. Their old CEO stepped down, and I saw that they cut those jobs, so maybe they'll end up, cutting a lot of cost here. But either way, I mean, those rumors of getting or having a potential deal with Amazon and Apple and Nike, I mean, I think that's just such good news for a company like Peloton that's been dying. And personally, I would like to see Peloton make it all on their own. But, at this point, they might be a little bit too past their, obviously they might be a little bit too worse or too, their fundamentals obviously at this point are getting pretty bad. So they might need some of these companies to push them back up. And, this is kind of like what we're talking about, Mike, with some of these EVs. Let's say Lucid or something keeps going down and pulls a Peloton, they might get bought out. And this is almost like an exact scenario of what they were talking about with Apple maybe buying some of those companies up. It looks like Apple's even the talks to buy this one.
True that. All right, well, Tom, do you have any last-minute plays before we wrap up today's stream?
Yeah, I just want to go check back in on some of these chip stocks because I really feel like that, I love these chip plays like AMD and NVIDIA and all these stocks for the longer term. But in the shorter term, it seems like AMD really recovered from these lows. They bounced off that $100 support. They ran all the way back up to $130, and now they're just starting to turn back over a little bit. And I will say, it's just not looking strong today. If we end up falling below 122 with AMD, I could see them starting to sell off in a pretty major way today. Same thing with NVIDIA. I know you did NVIDIA as your free day trade today, and it looks like it's starting to just slowly bleed off. And I wouldn't be surprised if it started accelerating a little bit here. It looks like it's starting to really break lower. And if this happens, unfortunately, we might see the QQQ and the SPY keep going down. It looks like the SPY is having a lot of trouble breaking back to the upside. We're heading right back down again. So it's going to be a volatile day, and I think I'm leaning a little bit to the downside with the way some of these tech plays look. But on the other hand, some of these airlines and some of the banks are doing pretty good, but it just seems like the overall market is going red.
Very true. So before we close today's stream, I just want to personally thank everyone for joining. Hunter just said Teledoc is getting spankarooed. So let's take a look at it.
Oh boy, it is down 6.4%. It's all the way down to $69. I mean, Dang. Could it get spanked any lower? I mean, I don't know what's going on here, Mike, but it's getting a little hot in here.
Getting spankarooed, Tom. Oh, gosh. So let me thank everyone for joining. So thank you so much, George, Mike, Hunter, Vicky, Kathy, Joe, Spacely, J Deep, Raymond, Jerry, Jay, Bill, Iranical, and I think that is everyone. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. Teledoc's getting spankarooed, so keep it on your watch list.
Pray for Teledoc.
All right, well, yeah, thank you guys so much for joining, and we hope you have an amazing rest of your day.